Patriots Day prior to last year was basically a quiet day.
The day was pretty uneventful.
The day of the marathon, I was in the command post at Copley Square, the finish line.
It was great. It was very festive. Everybody was in a good mood. It was a nice, busy, flowing, usual day, marathon day.
About somewhere after 2:30, the bombs went off. The whole vehicle shook. It was quite terrifying.
The first inkling that something was going on was the Zone 1 commander from EMS, Mike Bossy, came up and called me on the radio, and he said, Zone 1 to the UCC, what was that? And that was immediately after the first explosion. Before I had a chance to even answer him, the second explosion occurred.
I was actually one of the first call takers to get a call about the incident, and there's a lot of chaos, a lot of screaming in the background of the person who was calling, and the person who was calling actually described the situation as an explosion.
And my lieutenant said, put out a page, there's been an explosion. The first thing I thought was manhole explosion, because we get those. So I said, explosion where? He said, just put out the page. And he hung up the phone. I said, okay, something serious is going on.
It did sound like, they said something to the effect of a bomb or explosion. We couldn't quite get the address at first, and then we were getting a couple different addresses, so we weren't quite sure if it was all one incident or if it was two or more different incidents that happened.
They were just saying, we need help down here, rush people down here, rush people down here. So that was the first indication of something was wrong. We didn't know what it was at that moment.
All of a sudden, one of my high-ranking deputies goes on the air and says, "What was that?" I mean, that was his. I remember that clear as day. He said, "What was that?" And then dead silence. And then I kind of stood up in my, sat up in my chair, and I was kind of trying to see where this is going to go, where this is going to go. And then a second, I think his second transmission was, I think a device just went off.
Stop and you say, did she say explosion? Totally caught us off guard. Within seconds, it went crazy in here. We were told it was a mass casualty. I had to announce on the radio it being a mass casualty.
So we knew we had a major situation going on. And then we ramped right up from 0 to 100 for probably 10 or 12, 15 minutes. It was absolute chaos. But it was organized chaos for us. Everybody kicked in.
It was very quiet for maybe 30 seconds because everybody just grasped it, and then after that, it just turned into a machine. Everybody just started working, getting help out there, and everybody just getting as much information as we could and all the help they needed out there.
There were a lot of things that happened simultaneously up here, so we're sending resources into the event, ambulances and crews on bikes and gators that are already assigned to the event, directing them in and directing them where to go. Simultaneously, we're notifying all the city hospitals that there's been reports of explosions at the marathon, and that they should prepare to receive trauma patients. So all of that kind of goes on at the same time, and then we're also receiving 911 calls from folks. So
most of the calls that we got that were in regards to the events on Boylston Street, the bombing itself, were not people looking for medical care, not people looking for an emergency response, but looking for people who they had become separated from.
I looked up to the TVs and I saw the chaos. It was unbelievable. Something, I've been born and raised in Boston, and it's something I never thought I would ever see here.
You always think, you see New York City and all these, and you always think, well, it's a possibility here, but in my heart, I never really believed it would happen.
Just shortly after, we got a call for a fire at the JFK Library. Initially, not sure if it was connected to the explosions or not.
our concern was that this was a multi-location incident, and it took a little while for them to get there and get the information and realize that it didn't have anything to do with the bombings on Boylston Street.
A lot of people don't think about what happens in a dispatch center when something like that happens. It goes, from 0 to 60 just like that. Every phone lit up. The emergency calls coming in, the Vesta, people just yelling across the room, get this, get that. Everything kicks in at one time, and people show up to help, and it's almost hard, it's hard to say how you actually felt about it, but I was very proud.
Well, when we first got word about Officer Collier being shot, the mood up here, we were very, somber and just, we were just devastated by the fact that this had happened. But at the time, you don't really have time to process it because you're trying to deal with what's going on in the street right this very second. Unfortunately, because there was an armed robbery just before Sean was killed, we thought that Sean maybe stumbled across the suspect from that armed robbery at the 7-Eleven. I was working the 3 to 11 shift. The last call I really took that night was Sean Collier, and then the supervisor for the next shift sent me home. I volunteered to stay, and he actually said, it's a tough call to take. We don't want you here. Go home, process it, and we'll see you tomorrow. I was walking my dog at Hoyt Field, which is less than 3 blocks from where the carjacking had supposedly occurred, or where the gentleman bailed out of the vehicle at the Shell station at the corner of Memorial and River. Got the text on my phone about an armed robbery. So I came back, really hadn't had a chance to really do anything, then log into the computer screen here and read the call he was telling me about when he told me to call Watertown in regards to the vehicle and the carjacking. So that apparently they had a location for the vehicle and the suspects.
And we just started the shift. Phil and I realized something was going on when we heard about the shooting over in Cambridge. And then short time after that, we heard about the carjacking, which was in the same proximity of the shooting. And then a short time after that, it went to a phone call from the Cambridge police, and realizing that the incident that occurred there was coming into Watertown.
We made a general broadcast over our radio advising that a vehicle is being tracked in Watertown, possibly involved in the incident in Cambridge. And I kept relaying everything that Cambridge Dispatch Center was giving us.
Joe Reynolds and the sergeant pulled in behind the car, Joe Reynolds first, and almost immediately after he pulled in behind him and started a slow surveillance behind him and waiting back up, they stopped and opened fire on Joe.
I heard the officer on the radio, shots fired, shots fired.
I was hearing noises, but I thought I was dreaming, like I was hearing popping noises. So I didn't think anything of it until the first explosion went off, and it shook my house because it was only a block over from my house. So I jumped up and I said to my husband, what was that? And he's like, I think there's shooting out there.
Well, actually, we were engaged in the shooting for probably 10, 15 minutes. I mean, before the younger brother got away.
So once I found out what was going on, I called the OSC's line and I said, I'm here, would I can come in. He said, come in as you are. So I threw on my flip-flops and I ran out the door.
The custody of the suspect number 1 was, it was just part of the puzzle. And there was certainly more pieces of that puzzle to put together. We had a severely injured officer to deal with. We had coordination of outside agencies. We had suspect 2 on the loose.
It was still a very active area. We had lots of police officers coming from all sorts of communities coming into Watertown. We had the search ongoing. We knew we had one that was going to the hospital, along with the MBTA officer who had been wounded. We knew he was going to the hospital.
That day, everything in town that moved was suspicious.
The phones didn't stop ringing all day long. We had 6 to 7 dispatchers in here, and all they did was pick up phone calls, one after the other, all day long.
After the 400th call saying this is suspicious, you back off just to hear. But when I picked up the phone and I spoke to Mr. Hannaberry, I knew that this was it.
I mean, John was surprised at the phone call he received from the boat owner stating what he had found, and from that point on it was, everybody was going, everybody surrounding the area.
I made sure to put it out so that there would be no mistake. I believe I said 468, that's the patrol supervisor's unit. Boat in the driveway at such and such an address, blood on the top. Party believes he sees a person inside the boat.
It was pretty amazing at how quickly people respond to something like this. I mean, everybody steps up. And then that absolutely happened in this room as well as outside the room.
And I'm proud of this agency and, you know, what we accomplished with the other agencies. And, you know, we like to say, you know, Cambridge strong, Watertown strong, Boston strong. I think we did a communication strong kind of thing. You know, police, fire, we all came together, really worked really well. I'm very proud of our, you know, interactions that night and what we did. Still can't believe it happened a year later. It's, you know, to me it was like, you know, 3 weeks ago. If you ask me, it's like it's just crazy that a year has gone by almost.